So here's two magazines from the 80s, one from England and one from the United States. One is from 1988 and one is from 1989, so I thought I would go through both of them and give you some stories about the 80s. Having not been to England as much as I've been to the United States, I have been there more than once, but I definitely was not in England in 1989, so I can tell some 80s stories, but some of the stuff in this magazine may be a little bit different or interesting, and I've never even opened it. So I'm hoping that some of my viewers in England will appreciate this. This is a winter issue. It was for £2, 35p. On the back, there's a really nice Christmas image of the clock tower with Big Ben, the bell, and it says Big Ben looks down on the colorful Christmas scene in Parliament Square, London. And there's a small poem about Big Ben there. On the front, we have some Christmas singing children here. That this would be a good magazine to flip through during the Christmas time to get us in the mood. And it seems like we're probably all going to be home till Christmas anyway. So maybe you can come back and watch this video again then. And the inside, there's almost a frameable painting. It says, "Christmas greetings from this England. Oh, come all ye faithful." Then we get just some great color photographs of the countryside of England. This is West Riding. And you know, riding is a word that we don't really use too much here in the States. And I think of that show Red Riding, and you know, there's Red Riding 1970, I think it was 74 or what. We watched it, had Andrew Garfield and Patty Considine. It was a really interesting show to watch. And Red Riding is, you know, about the riding, the area, and also Red Riding kind of makes you think of Little Red Riding Hood too, and it was about sort of a big bad wolf killer, sort of. So it was a kind of a pun. But is England here about this cloistered lane where once our forebears trod with careworn brows to work the fields and wring their meager gain from stubborn clay that mocked the straining plow? Is England here? And just some great pictures and images of a beautiful country. Northumberland. Save our shires, Rutland. A really cool map of Rutland. F.W. Harvey, salute the soldier poets. So he was a soldier poet. A Yorkshire Christmas. So far, this is kind of free of ads. So far, it's just a lot of British culture, and which is great. But I was hoping to kind of run into an ad or two to spark some memories of the 80s and tell some stories. But this is a very so far, not a lot of ads, although this is a pleasant magazine to look through. I'm looking forward to going back to this after the video and you know, reading some of these articles. It's just fascinating stuff, especially for someone who's interested in history. It's almost just like a museum looking at all the stories and pictures from the past here. And let me read a little passage here from this section called Cornucopia. It says, the end that marks a Sussex tragedy. One wonders how many people who passed the little snowdrop inn in the shadow of Mount Caburn near the county town of Lewes, Sussex, know of the terrible tragedy it commemorates. Many might think it was named after the early spring flower, but in fact it was built in 1840, 4 years after a disaster that caused much loss of life and injury. There was a terrible storm in the Lewes area in 1836. The week before Christmas, there had been a hurricane, followed by 2 days of constant snow. And in some areas, 20-foot drifts were heaped upon the howling wind. Lewes was cut off from the outside world on the Monday, and everything came to a standstill. Nothing stirred except that which was driven by the frightful wind. All was silent. The Brighton mail coach, which started from Lewes on the Sunday evening, only reached its destination by being dragged by men. The roads were blocked until Friday of that week, but the forces which were to unleash the coming disaster were silently gathering. The cliffs that rise from this part of the road are almost perpendicular, and the violent gale on the Sunday night had deposited a continuous ridge of snow about 10 to 15 feet thick along the brow of these cliffs. A terrace of laborers' cottages, Boulder Row, lay under this overhanging ridge, and although efforts were made to induce the occupants to move out to safety, many would not do so, thus most of them were caught when disaster struck. According to an eyewitness quoted in a local newspaper at the time, when the fall came, it was a most awful spectacle. The mass of snow appeared to strike the houses at the base, leaving them up and breaking over them like a tidal wave, and when the mist of snow disappeared, there was nothing to be seen but an immense mound of white. Many of the unfortunate people in the wrecked dwellings were seriously injured, and 8 died, 6 women and 2 men. They were buried in a communal grave in Malling churchyard at Lewes, where a tablet commemorates their deaths. The Snowdrop Inn is a lasting memorial to this tragedy and still stands on this spot where it occurred so long ago. Interesting little tidbit there. If you're ever in England and decide to take in the Snowdrop Inn. If any of you watching this remember this magazine from the 80s, please leave a comment and tell me about if it's something that you liked or read, or if your parents or grandparents read it. Obviously, I mean, when this magazine was printed, I was very young. And here we do get to some ads in the end, mostly for local things. Tours of battlefields, services. It's almost like classified ads. The Army Benevolent Fund. We the Limbless look to you for help. Blesma. Honey Gem Spoon. Sheffield Made in Pile Stainless Steel. Or shaving brushes. Start a handsome collection of England's attractive volume binders. Convert your loose magazines into permanent book form. So if you want to bind magazines. And here's some completely different paper. Join the County Crusade. I wonder what this insert. Please detach along the perforation. It's an order form. For subscriptions to this magazine, and you could get a calendar. Interesting. So that was This England from winter 1989. Okay, this is the first time I've opened one of these up, and I hope you enjoyed that. Look at This England. And next we have a Life magazine with Pee Wee Herman on the cover. But before we get to that, I did, Mary and I got out today just to break the monotony, and I did find some deals on some interesting action figures. I wanted to show you real quick. These were at Dirt Cheap, which is a rummaging store. So when you this has a price on it, but the price is discounted at the register. So this actually was $1 because of a super sale. I've never watched Star Wars Resistance, so I don't know who this character is, but I think it's a colorful and interesting looking character, and I really like the helmet. It's kind of like my Wasp action figure, how the helmet's behind the visor. I really like that. So this is kind of cool. I've seen a lot of these Resistance action figures at Dirt Cheap. I don't think they were hot sellers. The figures, the packaging and the figures themselves are kind of whatever. They do kind of remind me a little bit of Rebels or Clone Wars, but they still have that basic 5 articulation. So I only paid $1 for this. If this is worth $200 someday, you know, I doubt it will be. I mean, I think even the old Ewok cartoon action figures are not even worth that much nowadays. Some of them might be, but I'm just not going to worry about it, and I'm going to open it. So this character's name is Toradoza. She seems to be in some type of pilot's uniform. I've never watched the show, so oh my gosh, I've got to cut my fingernails. I hope that it's we're at home. I need to cut my hair too. Okay. The figure itself, it doesn't have a weapon. It just has this alternate head. And instead of a helmet, it has a... Oh my, that's not good. It's very soft plastic on the peg, which is not great. Because you want to have this hard, because it feels like it's going to give to put the helmet on. And it does look pretty good with this helmet. Just kind of concerned that that plastic under is very soft. Feels like it's almost going to tear. I don't like that. So she has her helmet with a visor, and she can carry around this decapitated head too. So I don't know if that's bad paint or if that's supposed to be... I think that's supposed to be like makeup or tattoos under her. Interesting. Okay, so there's that figure. Next is a very damaged... I got this. This was also $1. A very damaged Bespin Han Solo with slightly different than the other Bespin Han Solo, as it includes goggles and a repair tool and a slightly different head. I think it's from the scene where he's fixing the Falcon when they're inside of the giant space worm. The card is really kind of messed up. I'm not sure if I'm going to open that one. This is Vice Admiral Holdo. This came to $8. Controversial character in the Last Jedi. Some people loved her. Some people hated her. But let's judge the action figure. Now, I am a Laura Dern fan, so I was, pretty happy to see her in the movie. This is my second Laura Dern action figure, because I have a Laura Dern Jurassic Park action figure too. So I've enjoyed her in most every movie she's been in. So I didn't hate the Vice Admiral Holdo character at all, like some people did. But I'm aware of some of the people who hated this character so much. I thought that, and I think I've said this before, that The Last Jedi definitely definitely, div- you know, changed course from what we're used to in our Star Wars. And it did a few things that you know were good, and some things that might not have been so good. But what I really wished had happened is that they had just stuck that course with the next movie instead of dialing back so many things that Ryan Johnson had done. I think he did have some good ideas that would have been compelling if he'd been allowed to finish telling the story. So I think we ended up with a very terrible concluding movie. The Rise of Skywalker just was not up to the standard of the other Star Wars movies. It had some good parts, but and I'm not a big defender of the Last Jedi, but I will say this: I would have rather had seen the story continue that what the story that we had in the Last Jedi from what we ended up getting. So this is Holdo. She has a soft goods dress. A lot of people hated that she wore this sort of evening dress rather than a uniform. Um, my take on that was she didn't expect to be in charge because of the incident with Leia, and she never had time to put a uniform on, like she was off duty. That's what I think happened, and then they were trying to show that this woman was commanding the entire time. She never had time to put a uniform on, so give her a break, kind of thing. She was like, you got the idea that maybe she was at an event or something, or she would may have just been, on a date or just hanging out on one of the ships when Leia was incapacitated. So everyone needs to cut her a break. Um, Laura Dern's a great actress, and I don't think that it was, such an awful character. I'm, I want peace for the Star Wars fans. I really do. But yeah, it wasn't. The Last Jedi wasn't my favorite movie. My favorite movie is the first Episode 4, A New Hope, followed by The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I never really liked any of the sequel trilogy. I really enjoyed the prequels. I enjoyed Clone Wars and I enjoyed Rebels. I never really liked the sequel trilogy all that much as a whole. It had its good points, but I just found it to be kind of unnecessary altogether. So, anyway, this is Holdo. Not a bad likeness. And finally, I got a retro collection Leia that was also in a very damaged state. And I think I'm going to try to flatten this and display. I don't want to open this at all because I like how it looks in the bubble. So I think I'll just leave this the way it is, except I'm going to try to flatten that out. So that's my brief action figure intermission. And now let's get into August 1988, the President's Moscow album. We're going to take a trip back to the Cold War, back to a pre-scandal Pee Wee Herman, back to a time when, I guess I was a child, but things did seem more innocent. There's a little water damage on this, but I think that might actually just make it crinklier. An ad for cameras with film. Oh, the days before our cell phones became a camera. Pee Wee Herman. When I was a kid in the 5th, 6th, 7th grade, Pee Wee Herman was on fire. He was the most popular kids show for Saturday morning. Everyone loved it. Everyone quoted from it. That was the Pee Wee's Big Adventure movie was a big deal. We all loved it. We quoted from it all the time. It's sad what kind of happened to him, but he still kind of hangs on. You still see him pop up in movies. Here's a Toyota Corolla, classic late 80s car. Here we have a CBS Compact Disc Club. Now, the two that I was most familiar with were BMG and Columbia House, and you would get these free CDs, and then you're trapped. They would mail them to you like every day, and if you didn't send them back, you paid for them. Then you would get a big fat bill in the mail, and you either went to the trouble of mailing these things back. Now, for me, in my case, I didn't have a CD player until the 90s, so the idea of 6 CDs is kind of crazy because CDs were incredibly expensive back then. And let's look at what we have. In Excess, um, Terrence Trent D'Arby, Tiffany. Tiffany was very popular at this time. Bruce Springsteen was legendary. David Lee Roth, Robert Plant, and Aerosmith with Janie's Got a Gun became really really popular. That was their big comeback song. Debbie Gibson, Billy Idol, these were all, and we had MTV and we would watch the videos all the time. So great photography in this issue of Life. Here is Elle Macpherson. Elle Macpherson has gone bandanas. Her first was patterned in the green and gold of her Sydney, Australia high school colors. That bandana is now one of the more than 400 that the supermodel and her photographer husband have assembled between them. No two are alike. So, bandanas, yeah. Okay, let me tell you a story from the 80s. The movie called Colors came out in the mid 80s, and bandanas were banned in so many schools, especially red and blue bandanas. Wearing them was considered like wearing gang colors and stuff like that. So, but then you had the little tough kids who would wear them and in the 5th grade and say they were in the Crips or the Bloods. So it's kind of funny. Pasta, fresh pasta and sauce. You can pretty much find the exact same thing today. Let's see. What is this? This is the Raj chess set, only from the Franklin Mint. The Raj, luxury is a way of life. Imperial India, like I've never actually seen this. I remember the Civil War chess set. That one was peddled everywhere, but this is an ad for McDonald's, and we can't make this hamburger. We just can't bring ourselves to do this to our big, beautiful McDLT. Put it together, that is. So this is an ad for the McDLT. It was the idea that you would order your burger, and the hot side would be hot. It was in a special container that had 2 sections. So the hot part was in one side, and the cold part was in the other. And then you were supposed to fold the container in half and create your burger. The packaging was expensive. I don't think it lasted very long. It was kind of made into a joke a lot. The ad for Tabasco sauce. Well, it's the original hot sauce. I don't care what anyone says. There's 10,000 hot sauces everywhere you go. You buy them in gift shops. You see them everywhere. Tabasco sauce is all you need. If you just want hot sauce, if you want hot sauce that's going to reliably be hot, just get Tabasco sauce. I don't understand. Merit filter cigarettes. Surgeon General. They were bad for you then, and they're bad for you now. The new Ford Probe. Is this the one for 89? Well, it's sleek. It's 80s. It's someday maybe classics. Kahlua and cream, pretty popular drink even today. Merv Griffin, he was behind a lot of the popular shows from the 80s. He made a very memorable appearance in The Man with Two Brains with Steve Martin. Highly recommend watching that movie. Gatorade, invented at the University of Florida. A thirst-quenching, electrolyte-restoring sports drink. The granddaddy of all sports drinks. And there seems to be so many different things now, like Powerade and all these ridiculous energy drinks. But this is all you need. Winston, here, real people, real taste, and they have a. She's a photographer, I guess. She's got press credentials. You look at, just notice this. See how the little tar thing looks like it was hand done. I mean, this was before I mean, some of this stuff was probably laid out by hand before computers controlled everything. Nukes no more. What happens to nuclear power plants when they're abandoned? Scary thought. And we're talking about abandoned nuclear power plants in New York and South Carolina. I'm sure some of you have watched that HBO miniseries or limited series Chernobyl. Well, I remember when Chernobyl happened, and it was a freaky time because we were questioning this source of energy that was supposed to be the savior. This was supposed to save us from the pollution causing coal burning plants and give us a clean alternative. But when Chernobyl and another thing called 3 Mile Island also happened when I was a kid, people have become freaked out about nuclear energy. The President Summit album, of course, President Reagan. I guess that's a picture of his passport. And then he's meeting Premier Gorbachev of at that time the Soviet Union, and showing all. It was a different time, and Reagan. There was a lot of tension. And here's another story. Growing up in the 80s, being a kid in the 80s, we did for real legitimately worry about nuclear holocausts to the point where it did create anxiety in a lot of us as kids. We really did worry about that. When shows like The Day After came out in 1984, and I mean, people were so freaked out by that show on TV that some people couldn't even go to work the next day. It was a real concern. We did worry about it all the time. Living in the Cold War was bizarre because it really seemed like there were times when we thought it was not just a possibility but an inevitability. So I am glad that a lot of that is gone. Here's another car ad. Hyundai, cars that make sense. Look at that thing. Nancy Reagan. In Leningrad. Bermuda. Here's an article about shoplifting. And what are the things people are shoplifting? Junky looking earrings like you would get at a Big Lots. Duracell batteries. Pair of sandals, kind of like the nail polish. Shoplifting. Bess Meyerson's arrest highlights a multi-billion-dollar problem that many stores won't talk about. Bess Meyerson, the 64-year-old former Miss America, spends a lot of her time in northern Pennsylvania. Her contractor boyfriend, Carl Capasso, 41, is serving 4 years for tax evasion in Allenwood Federal Prison Camp. And when she goes to visit him there, they can sit down at a picnic table under a wide umbrella and look across the rolling hills to Bald Eagle Mountain. She stays at the 10-unit Northwood Motel just across from the prison driveway, bright with geraniums and a swimming pool. The motel costs her $23 a night. There is not much to do in Williamsport area, though once a year the Little League World Series is held here. Meyerson often went shopping at the Hills Discount Department Store 8 miles on Route 615. So the 64-year-old former Miss America was shoplifting. And they're talking about installing all the cameras to catch shoplifters, which was kind of a new thing in the 80s, too. I mean, they didn't have all those cameras back then. That was a new thing. Vantage cigarettes. Regain premium gas treatment. I just have memories. My dad, we would stop. It was the 80s. We would, stop at the gas station, whether it was full service or not. You saw more full service back then than you do now. When I was a kid, many of them were full service. They would check your oil and all that stuff. But then my dad would get gas and he'd buy something like this, and then he would pour it in the gas tank when it was done. He was very conscientious about taking care of the engine. And I do the same thing. Canadian whiskey. Canadian Club Windsor Trumps. Cuba. An article about Cuba. We were definitely not allowed to go to Cuba then. I'm not even sure if we're allowed to go now. I would like to go there to see all the cars and enjoy. If we ever do get to go there someday, I'd like to. I live in a country where we're not allowed to go there legally. Unless we have a special type of visa for teaching, or there's so many weird restrictions, though I don't even want to deal with it, because like if you do go, you have to have a certain type of thing, and you have to buy so many things at so many different places, and you're not allowed to go to other places, and it's just kind of crazy. So AT&T. What do you do when your dreams have pulled you away from the one person who taught you to push? Stalking the wild things. Oh, wow. Where the wild things are. It's interesting. And it's puppets. Before the movie that came out a few years ago. Interesting. More camera film. You know, they people read magazines like this. This is before the internet. So people read magazines like this. They looked at the pictures, and then you see an ad for film, and it inspired them to want to take pictures. We didn't have an internet where we could just look at pictures all the time. It was here or TV, and or go to a museum. So Gettysburg remembered. 125 years, and it's a lot longer than that now. It still has the cards in here, which is amazing to me. I should pull these out and put them in the mail and see what happens. Little Civil War history. Tracy Chapman. She made at least one song that I really love. Give me one reason to... And I'll turn right back on. That one, I love that song. Canon color laser copier. When I was in school, when we had assignments and worksheets, they were purple. They were literally a white, and the ink was purple. And I guess this was a mimeograph, I think it was called. Before we had the Xerox copiers, we had these. Everything we had was on this purple ink. And for every grade of school, I never saw black text on a worksheet or a test. It was always that purple ink. Autism. We didn't really even know what that meant in the 80s until Rain Man came out, believe it or not. Most people had no idea what that even meant. A lot of cigarette ads. Two of Siegfried and Roy, like how young they are. Three of a Kind, Full House, Las Vegas, The American Way to Play. I met Siegfried, and I was walking around in Vegas, and I kind of wandered into his private little sanctuary for his tigers, and was looking around, and I ran into him, and he was an incredibly nice man. Me and Mary were there, and I had bought a book about them, a hardcover book in the gift shop that I wanted to take home, and he saw the book, and he's like, "Oh, you've got a good book," and he signed it for both of us, wrote some nice things, and signed it from Siegfried and Roy. This was after Roy Horn had the accident, so he signed for Roy, and then he took some pictures with us, and he was an incredibly nice man. Scene Double, I think this is about twins. The Zappa Zoo Haagen-Dazs ice cream. Here's another memory from the 80s. There weren't a lot of flavors of ice cream. You had chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla, and then you had Neapolitan, which was like the three of them combined. Then you had black walnut, cherry, Rocky Road, and then you had sherbet. You didn't have all of cookie dough and mud tracks or whatever, Mississippi deer tracks or whatever. None of that stuff came out until much later. The Zappa Zoo. Moon Unit Zappa, Dweezil Zappa, Frank Zappa. I never knew much about the Zappas. on that pop culture area, I'm a little weak. The Pyramid Cuff Watch by Alfred Durante. Tearful Trail, Argentina's Lost Children Go Home. Take Care with Culligan. A water softener. Coney Island. Lots of great black and white pictures. Here's the Help America Shine, the 1988 Olympic coins. There's always a coin to buy. And here we get to the Pee Wee Herman part. When he was at the top of his game in the 80s. And Pee Wee Herman could do no wrong at that time. What? That's... The devil made him do it. What is this? Get to the nunnery. The candidate's advance man said it proved to be St. Raphael Home for the Aged, and said, while campaigning in Marble Cliff, Ohio, George Bush checked around but found no babies to be with, so with Catholic taste he gave another, Sister Michelle, his chest salute. He kissed... I'm not sure what's going on with this. I've never seen this picture. That's George Bush. I don't know what's up with that. I do remember when you had to get your yogurt in a metal can, like a fruit. Like now you might get your fruit cocktail still like that, but yogurt came like that too. Be in your lunch like that. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. That was Life magazine, and this is England with an action figure in Intermission, and this was a step back into the 80s, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And I will make more, so click the bell icon, rate, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you remember any of this stuff. Tell your own stories. I'd love to read them. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.